diggers appear, and ain't no wannabes here with some not so nice advice for your writing career. To be clear, no punches will be pulled, but the punch may be spiked how they like before they get on the mic. To my left, we got the mighty Mer Lafferty, and if I piss her off, believe me, she'll come after me. And her co-host, Matt Evan Wallace, on the right. Yes, she may be half as hype as she can take him in a fight. So settle in, folks, buckle in and boot up. Time to meddle in a way to make your writer shut up. It's hard work, but the perk is that it's fun and exciting. Facebook will still be there when you're done writing. Ditch Diggers! Ditch Diggers!
Coming to you live from the Orca Support Network room of the Ditch Diggers mansion. We've got the Ditch Diggers with Mer Lafferty, Matt Wallace, with our special guest host, Mer's agent, Seth Fishman. Hi, guys. How are ya?
Good, Mer.
How are y'all?
Good, good. Took us a little while to get all of us together in the same virtual Orca room, but glad we're all here. Before the recording, we did discuss where we stood on the Orca issue, and Seth did tell us he saw Moby Dick, so it's been a good, interesting start to the day.
And we're not going to explain that any further for the podcast listeners out there. You're just going to have to do. If you want context for these things we talked about at the beginning of the show, you got to come to the live streams.
That's right.
That's part of the deal. Yeah. So.
Exactly. Or you can follow my Instagram live stories, which are now deleted. So it's one of the two.
Which are now deleted. I love it.
Yeah, so first, real quick, what we've been up to. Matt, you've had a pretty boring week.
Yes, nothing happened last week in my life. It was very, very staid. No, I was just telling Seth all about this. Preemie says, proud of everyone for not making Fishman whale jokes, and I just want to acknowledge that I had to refrain, and that's how much I respect you, Seth. It was very hard for me because I love terrible puns, but
thank you. Well, I get seasick, so I try and stay away from it myself.
There you go. But yes, no, I was just telling Seth about so it was actually a very busy, exhausting, but very cool week for me. It was one of those weeks that was so good you start to question when the other shoe was going to drop, Murr. You know what I mean? It's like you start to think all this good stuff is happening. When does the bad stuff start happening? But yeah, so last Sunday, about 2 weeks ago, Summerfest started. Everyone called not E3, which is when all the video game companies were announcing all their new games for the coming year in separate live streams. And on Sunday, that's what it was. It was not E3. That's a whole other issue. We're not going to get into it. But anyway, on Sunday, Xbox Studios did their stream, and they finally, after a long time, I won't say how long, but after a long time, they finally announced the video game that I've been writing with a very talented narrative team. For an Exile Entertainment, one of Microsoft's Xbox's first-party studios. They finally announced the game and debuted the world premiere of the trailer. So Clockwork Revolution is the game. It got a great reaction. We headlined the streamer. Like, it was kind of a big deal. We headlined the whole stream.
I know. I watched the whole thing because you texted me about it.
I did. You were one of the few people that I texted ahead of time to let them know that was happening. I didn't give you any details that violated an NDA. Thank you.
No,
but
nothing
yes,
at all.
so. Nothing at all. I just told you should watch the stream. But yeah, so Clockwork Revolution headlined, killed, got great reactions. It was trending all day alongside BioShock, which is not a bad thing. I'm perfectly happy with that comparison.
True.
And then 2 days after that, Savage Crowns came out, which is the last book in my Savage Rebellion trilogy. So we closed out on that, and I did a bunch of we to there. Mer has. She's holding up the book as we speak. She has it because Mer, as she always does, we did a live stream on release day and did a launch stream, which was great. I gave away a bunch of books, which I will be mailing out to the people who won them, by the way, very soon, I promise. And thank you everybody for emailing me who won. And did a bunch of other events after that. I did one with Kate Elliott, which was like a huge deal for me.
That's
because
right.
I'm a die in the wool, longtime Kate Elliott fan. She's like a legend to me. We're like kind of friends. We're not kind of friends now. Kate would be very fan of us. We're friends now. It's just very weird for me to be friends with Kate Elliott because she was like a really big deal to me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So she did an event with me that was amazing, and then a bunch of other cool stuff happened that I can't really even talk about yet. But yeah, it was a very eventful week, and I just want to thank everybody for their support on everything, on the game announcement and the book out. And I want to thank you, Murph, for always helping me out with things. And I just want to thank Seth for being excited about everything when I told him about it 15 minutes ago. I'm just happy, and I want to thank him.
Are you kidding me? Authors rightfully complain about how long it takes for books to come out. Well, think about games. I mean, it's just
oh yeah,
it's chaos. It's decades. Well, something like that.
It
Sometimes.
can be. It absolutely can. It absolutely can be, Seth. You know, we won't talk about Kickstarters that have been going on forever or anything because it's not that show. But yeah, no, it absolutely can be a long time. So but it's more. But the thing is, at least in my case, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but seeing that trailer drop and seeing all the reactions to it, it's worth it. It's worth the development process, and the game is going to be worth it when I actually get to play the whole thing. I will be very proud of that. So it does take a long time, but all these things ultimately are worth it. They're worth the fact that you finished it, that you completed it. It's an amazing accomplishment in itself, whether it's a book, whether it's a video game. And it's worth doing. And it's worth finally, when you finally see the fruits of your labor. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, forget about me. Like,
Well, I don't have any exciting news or anything. I've been working behind the scenes on some stuff. Some of the stuff I've sent to Seth, some of the stuff I haven't yet. That's pretty much just it. I've been trying to come up with a good workflow because I'm now doing transcriptions for all 3 of my podcasts, and I'm doing annotated transcriptions for 2 of them for the supporters in Substack and Patreon. And that's taking time, and it's important.
Love to hear all the time getting taken and not book writing. Perfect.
That's what we brought you on here to
at the same time, it's good
bad.
You're building it's okay, you're connecting with your audience, and look at all the, just so everyone knows, this hard work is real hard work that stops, it's like part of the other side of the job, right? Connecting with fans is really important. Connecting with your community is really important. So please don't think I'm poo-pooing that. It's just, I know the challenge is real,
Yes. Well,
no, that was an amazing agent response. I loved it. That was a great moment. That was real shit. Shit got real in that moment.
It did.
And I like it.
It really did.
To be fair, I did read something just recently, so I feel actually quite satiated. It's like, I know she's feeding me, so it's okay.
Yes. And I have something completely different to send you shortly, so hopefully that'll be entertaining. But we did the Father's Day thing this weekend, and went to a baseball game last night, so that was our excitement. But yeah, what about you, Seth? What can you tell us what you've been up to for the week? Well, there's a lot of school ending, Father's Day kind of stuff going on as well.
Happy belated, by the way.
Yes.
And to Jimothy as well, Mark.
We were on a little Duffy boat, or actually we upgraded to a pontoon, so that was quite nice for Father's Day. But
nice.
Work is interesting because this is I'm heading to like a family vacation on Friday, so trying to wrap things up while also, things start to slow down in some way, shape, or form in the summer. So it's trying to get a lot of reading done and get things lined up as to when you can send things out and whatnot. But so it's been weird. I have a lot of clients deciding to give me stuff, and it's been great. But it's just a lot of reading and stuff before I go on a vacation where I want to read for funsies and for worksies. And those 2 things can combine, but every once in a while you just want to give yourself I'm allowed to not bring my Kindle because that's where I read on my manuscripts mostly. But I'm happy to say I sold a client's book who we've gone through 3 different manuscripts trying to find something that we could sell. And he's a great author, and I don't know why we couldn't land the first 2, not in the SFF space. And we had a mini auction on this one, and we sold it. And it was just sort of the thing you live for as an agent is the real gratefulness, in the author's voice. And I was like grateful as well, because I was sure I was going to lose him. You can't sell them. You can't, why would you stay with someone? But it worked out, and very excited about it. So it was good last week. Good week to come.
Nice.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And as for, why would you keep someone who couldn't sell your book? I guess you'd look at it like it's one book, and it might actually be bad. So you got to move on to the next one.
Well, I think you're right, but I think the most common time that there's a separation is not actually conflict based. It's probably more around not being able to sell a book or having a book turn in that the agent doesn't feel they can sell, which is slightly different. I don't think this is good enough yet to go out, and an author deciding that they really want that agent too, and so they go somewhere else, and that makes sense. So it makes sense. It's just one of those moments where there's chance something like that might happen.
Right.
You know?
Well, I'm glad it
But
worked
it all
out.
worked
for you.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all worked out. Yeah. No. I'm very happy.
So one thing I've always been interested in, and this is just me being nosy, Seth, is you're also a children's book author. And we'll have links to your books in the show notes. And if you do !guest in the chat, you'll get a link. So what is it like being an author and an agent at the same time? Is it like lawyers don't represent themselves in court, so agents don't represent themselves in publishing? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't rep myself. I have an agent who I've been with for a long time named Kirby Kim. He's at Janklow Nesbitt. And most of the time, I think agents rep outside of their agency. I mean, if they're repped by someone. Though one of my colleagues has a book and she's repped by our agency. So we're starting to change that. But I wanted to be a writer forever. I mean, sort of same path as y'all. My first thing I ever had published was in a pamphlet called Minas Tirith Evening Star, or Minas Tirith, about Gandalf going to the movies back before the movie came out. So like, I'm always in the space, but I bring that up because I went to an MFA program. So I know that world very well. I got the same agent for an adult speculative novel that came close but didn't sell. I then sold 2 YA books on proposals, so I know what it's like to sell on a proposal. I know what it's like to have YA books to go on tour. I know what it's like to have those books be on end caps and get like a lot of big blurbs and then not sell and then go out of print. I know what it's like to go into bookstores and not be able to find your books. And then I know what it's like to do picture books and then have a lot of them and have a book a year and have one of them do really, really well and sell in a lot of countries and other ones do less. So I feel like I know a lot of what author experiences. And I think that for me is good in terms of being able to, empathize and really understand the differences and also to, speak towards, especially this kind of conversation that we're having here, not between y'all two necessarily, but between listeners. There's a lot of questions always about, why you write or what you're looking for. And a lot of times I hear something which makes a lot of sense, which is, I just sort of want to get that book into the bookstore and feel that measure of success. And it has to in some ways be more than that. Like, are you okay with that book then going out of print and you going into the store and not being able to find it? And so, and that's a thing that people do not think about. And mind you, I'm a pretty positive guy when it comes to being able to good writing working. So it's not like I'm anti that stuff, but me knowing my way around it has me thinking about all the different ways that I and authors can work. So that's why, I wrote adult stuff, but then I did YA and then I do picture books. Well, a lot of my clients write into different spaces and I rep into those different spaces, not as a casual thing, but as something that I think is an important part of my job. And so I know that I, unlike many other agents, rep tons of different stuff because of that, because I want my creatives to be able to do whatever they want to do and to feel confident with the representation into that space. At the same time, you know what? I have a pretty successful picture book series running, and I am going to, after this next one, I'm going to probably stop doing picture books so that I can go back to adult, which I haven't done in 10, 12 years and need motivation to sort of get around to doing. Because it's pretty easy to do a picture book, even if you don't think it is. It's 500 words in a year as opposed to 90,000 words in a year. You can definitely get it done. And so that's babbling a bit, but it is a unique perspective. When I was doing the adult stuff, to get a little bit dirtier, when I was doing the adult stuff, that was when it was the closest to anything that felt like a conflict of interest, which was more along the lines of, like, I knew the editors more, or rather I interacted with them a lot more. I knew the publicity opportunities a lot more. Occasionally there would be times when a book of mine and a book of a client's would be coming out at the same time, or submissions, or whatever, is that kind of thing. And it was never it was never a competition. I would always make things go through my agent and let hands off on it. But you're aware of it, so there is like something to be said there. But I'm really honest and open with my clients, and they all know it. And no one's ever left me for being a writer that I know of. But it's an interesting. I think it's a value add as opposed to a detract.
Mm-hmm.
If that's how you pronounce the word, detract.
Yeah, well, no, I was gonna run with it. No problem.
It's also Mur's. It's also Mur's DJ name. I don't know if you knew that or not.
D-Track?
Yeah,
D-Track.
Okay.
She has fun, but she's trying to get back to it.
I like it.
Yeah.
No, that's what's really interesting to me about I mean, there was a lot of things that occurred to me while you were talking to some, but it didn't even occur to me that like that would be a detractor for someone considering an agent, because the fact that you're also a writer. Like when you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally see how that would be a thing. And I think we could see how authors would worry about that. But for me, I love the fact that you understand that side of things as an agent. You know, one of the things I really love about my current agent is they worked in acquisitions as an editor for a publisher. They've also worked extensively as a bookseller and understand that side of it, which is, if anything, is even more important to me. I love, totally more important. She really understands like what booksellers look for, what they want, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And she brings all of that to what we do. And I always have looked for an agent that had those perspectives to bring to things, because it's so important to understand. And there are so many facets to this industry and to this business to understand: the author's perspective, the publisher's perspective, the bookseller's perspective, the audience's perspective. And I personally think it's a total bonus to have an agent who sees all of those different sides of things and has experienced them firsthand and can bring them to them. So I completely agree with you personally that it's a bonus. It's not, a subtraction or a detract, as we just said.
And thanks for saying that. I mean, one of the things, I think the biggest concern people tend to have is rightfully so, is like, if you succeed, would you leave, kind of thing.
Right.
And I guess I get that question, but it's not a concern. But the thing that I think is the other examples of bonuses, and some of my favorite stuff I didn't really go into about, like, say, last week or whatnot, is that, the traditional publishing stuff is I've been doing this for 17 years. It's not that it doesn't change. It changes a lot, but that's sort of the easy stuff now. Either it works or it doesn't. We know our way around it, and we fight the fight however you want to fight the fight. But as the market and as everything constricts in various ways, and there's merging and people want to do more big books and less throw at the wall books and stuff like that. You have to find ways for your clients, especially the prolific ones, especially the ones with books that are sort of performing but not enough to someone to quit their job or whatnot. You have to find other ways for people to make money or to expand their world. And I love doing that stuff. And sometimes I do that stuff myself first as an experiment. Like I've run a Kickstarter for myself back with one of my books that was a real experiment. To be able to know how much work it took to do, to see what kind of money you could make, and see what direct-to-consumer, interactions along those lines look like. And to that end, I've started doing a lot of stuff in that space for clients as well. And now the things I'm really interested in are audio originals. I've been interested in novellas forever. I think that publishers are doing a really bad job, except for probably Tor.com, in terms of novellas. And I actually, when I say that, I probably mean even just like literary publishing more than SFF. But I think there's a lot of space for other stuff that people create. And that's why we're here on a podcast right now, and like our agency has a podcast agent. We're one of the few small ones. I'm not trying to pitch my agency, but it's interesting because that was part of our LA office, which I run. And that's part of my desire to bring in other avenues of ways that either our clients can think of things or sort of expand the opportunities that might exist. And it's not always easy. It doesn't always work that way, but it used to be when I was like a young agent. It was like, okay, we can place your short story. Well, now, let's think about totally different ways of doing things, from what, like, direct to consumer to audio originals to what can help in all these different ways. And that publishers tend to go kicking and screaming at, and we just have to pretend they don't exist while we move forward. So I find that to be really, really fun. And as a writer yourself, you can sort of do some of those things yourself, or try to, and learn about them without experimenting on a client, if that makes sense.
Right.
No, absolutely. That's a very interesting way to look at it. And hey, look, we preach the gospel of freelance on this podcast, and one of the major tenets is always, you needed, with very few exceptions, you need to develop multiple revenue streams. You need to have as many irons in the fire as possible. So I love that you're looking for alternate avenues for your clients and alternate ways to make money doing this in this industry, because we authors 100% need that. That's really cool.
My goal from this is to have an email from Mur right afterwards being like, hey, we never talked about this, like, on all these different things. Let's go into, which is what I want.
No,
this
sure.
is all very big mind game for me. I see. Was not prepared for the mind game.
Just a big
That's why
Just a big psyop by Seth. Just a big psyop by Seth. I love that. No, hey, there's always more to explain about Myrrh. That's one of the bases of our friendships. Yeah, absolutely. So I totally think you guys should get to work on that.
We do have a question from chat. We have, can you talk about working with an illustrator for picture books? I heard picture books take 5 years-ish from writing to publication.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say one thing. I love this question. It's a great question. It's a common question. And then the last part of it I find is something that is generalized outside of the picture book realm, which I find really, really interesting, is the gossip mill. I think that I just want to say as a side note, just to speak to that in general, is it feels like writers are sort of like, I don't know, it's like you're reading a lot of parenting books, where there's a lot of good advice in there, but each book is your own, or I don't know. There's a lot of different things that point you in different directions. They're not usually bad, but they're all sometimes surprisingly off a little bit. Like 5 years is not right. 2 years to 3 years is right. But that's sort of not too bad, right? So it is interesting. There's not untruths to that, but I always find it fascinating. I always want to know, like, where has this happened? Though I used to do that again myself as a writer, like where we'd be like, oh, if we sold my book for $100,000, I would give the publisher 25,000 of that to use in marketing, which no one actually does ever, but I think people talk about that way a lot.
My God.
So to answer your question, it's a great question. For those of you who don't know, picture books are written in a script. And they have a very specific way they're supposed to be written. There are exceptions to the rules, but basically if you type in like a picture book dummy into Google, you'll see lots of really wonderful website resources that give you images of how to create the dummy. Even if you're an illustrator, yes, but even if you're a writer, it'll let you write it in. They're usually about 32 pages, of which 4 of those have copyright and title and whatever. So it's something like 28 pages in about 500 words. So most of the pitching you're correct, is done to people with just the script. And then you sell that, you find an agent with just the script, and then you sell it to a publisher, and then the publisher says yay, and they make a deal with you. And then they go off and they try and find an illustrator that matches to this process, and they pay that illustrator. Annoyingly, that illustrator is kept at arm's length from you, which I find insane. The frown on y'all's faces is true. You don't communicate with them most of the time. You communicate through the editor, unless you're sneaky, which I think most people are, but still, and in your script you have art direction, and you can make comments on the art that's substantial comments, but in general they keep them apart. And there's one, probably that's a rule that's been created around the biggest possible exceptions, which would be, say I'm a nobody, I sell my picture book for $5,000 to a good press, they love it, and they bring in a huge value add, Oliver Jeffers as the artist. They want to take it to the next level. So this is the real advantage of that, is that they can go and spend as much money as they want, as they feel, to bring in a big illustrator to help make the book big. It doesn't mean that unknown, like a non-value add name illustrator won't be good, right? Or good for the art, or make that book work, right? Things break out all the time, but they can choose to do that. And you can also imagine that Oliver Jeffers is less interested, even though this stinks to say, in your notes than, say, someone else's, because they're, he's a bigger name person, right? So you can imagine some of that, but in general, I found it to be really frustrating. And I think the best move as an agent is to actually have an illustrator attached, but that's also really hard to do. Like you have to have someone that like wants to be doing it. You have to have someone who, so it's not like a work for hire, but someone who wants to be doing it, that you already have a split worked out, who's a value add themselves. A lot of times when people submit things with illustrators attached, the art's just not good enough, or the writing's not good enough. But the positive of it is, say the art and the illustrating is good enough, then when you submit it, some editors are going to pass because of the writing, some are going to pass because of the art, because they're human, but the ones who like the art and the illustration together will be more excited about the book, in theory, than they would be about just the script, and you will probably make more money off of it. My first picture book had an artist attached, and she did four books with me. And these are long-winded answers. Are these too long for you guys, or is this like, okay, I don't want to?
No, you were rolling, man. Don't break your own momentum. Go for it.
Yeah. So that's sort of the answer to that. In terms of like the turnaround time, yeah, it takes a long time, and it's sort of silly. in terms of the amount of work you put in, but let's say you sell a book tomorrow, that's a picture book, then you're going to take and say that the edits are like normal. So say it takes 2 months to edit it. And it could be much less than that. 2 months to edit it, and in that in that time period, they can start looking for an author. The reason why it could take 5 years, illustrator, sorry, is that sometimes you create a list and you only go to one person at once, and sometimes it can take a while to find an illustrator, and then or you can find someone and then they have to drop for some reason, or you have problems with their art and you have to drop them. So there are reasons why the things can take longer, but in a normalized environment, it'll take 2 months to find an illustrator. So that's 4 months in, and then it'll take that illustrator about a year to do the art, give or take, and then it will take another year to publish it, right? So that is a long time. We're talking about that's 2.5 years right there, and that's on a normal. So there's much faster versions and there's slower versions. Like with me having an artist attached, wherever it'll pop it out a year later, and then have a book a year going because you're on a rotating cycle. But it was true that I would write a manuscript, turn it in, have it sold, and then another one and another one before. Like I could have many of them done. So it is a sit and wait. But 5 years is only like the extreme circumstances of things not working. But I said a lot there because I know that's not the area people know the most about. So yeah.
No, dude, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you're worried about giving long-winded answers. The whole reason we started this podcast is like no one explains this shit to people, or at least it doesn't happen nearly often enough. Like people want to know. Like I want to do a picture book, but I don't know anything about the industry. I have a great idea, I have a great passion. I'm a good writer. But how do I do it? Like nobody explains these things. So I think that everything you just said, I think, is gold for people interested in.
Well, thanks for that. And to let people know, like I was embarrassed when I wrote my first one because I feel like everyone thinks that they can write a picture book, and they try it, and it's hard. The thing is, when I said it wasn't hard, I don't think in terms of the brute effort of writing it. Like you can write a draft in a weekend if you want 500 words, right? The challenge that I find with picture books is the story's often repetition, or a lot of it's like, oh, I told my kid something and they like it. Well, yeah, your kid does like that and it's fair, but oftentimes it doesn't mean that it's like good enough to be written into the script. Just like good writing is good writing, right? And then there's other things like editors don't love rhyming. Every
genre is different. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just gonna say editors don't like rhyming most of the time. There's lots of exceptions to that rules, but most of the time actually they don't. So that's a weird challenge, but that's what everyone goes to do. So and then they don't follow that 32 page rule. So there's a lot of stuff that like creates these barriers in picture books. So I would just say the biggest thing to do is to go research and see what's out there. Go to your Barnes and Noble, and remember that with picture books, the spine's much thinner. So if you're facing spine out, if you're a book that's facing spine out, you're in trouble. Like it's hard. So you have to be one of the very few that get outward facing. And a place like Barnes and Noble, which has changed their way that they're doing it, which is all about what of the month it is, good issues like wellness or diversity or whatnot, which is great. This is all good, but these are the things that they're facing that they'll give focus to. And then it's like big bestsellers of the past, right? So when they say kids' books are up, what they really tend to mean a lot of times is classics are doing really, really well, as opposed to lots of new people are doing stuff.
Yeah, I still want to stab somebody every time I see a Tolkien book on the new releases shelf just because they put out a new cover. I'm like, do you know how many authors should be there except besides that? But anyway, one question. Everyone knows a book has to be polished and good before it's submitted, but what are the sorts of je ne sais quoi elements that elevate a story from good to must buy? And I'm going to put a little addendum on that. What do you recommend people pay for their own editing before they submit, like on your end? Because I know a lot of people worry about submitting a rough draft to an agent and being put down for that. So, answer Valerie's question first and then my addendum.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So it sounds like you have it sort of figured, right? You want it to be good and ready to go. The question, the je ne sais quoi, like therein lies the I like this book, I don't like this book, my own personal take. I think I have been doing this long enough that I can say with a big degree of accuracy whether I'll like a book on the first page, just because of like, you can tell very quickly on the first page, like the confidence, you can tell the writing ability, you can tell this like parts of the story or whatnot. But that's not all of it. And I think that's one of the reasons why fantasy is one of the harder things to rep, is because it's the hardest thing to give buy-in to, because you have to give more time and space to a fantasy novel than any other genre, sci-fi included, in order to be able to know what's going on and to get yourself settled in. And the problem, of course, is it's also very long. But in general, you know, I don't think flashiness or any of that stuff that's never my take on things. I can just tell so easily if something is good, and I think that you can too. If something that you're really, it doesn't have to be like the quick catch in. It's really, to me, it's about the assuredness of the writing. Just knowing that I'll feel confident continuing on. I don't need to have someone be shot in the head in the very first line. You know, I just need to know that I know that they know how to shoot someone in the head well, you know, when I'm reading. And that's sort of what I feel. And I know that seems like nebulous, but that's exactly what you're asking. Like, what is that thing? It's not anything flashy. It really is about the basics. And then you ask the question, which is a great question about paying for an editor. Some people pay for editors. I think most people who do that are people who aren't writers. Therefore, that's nonfiction. We're paying for editors to write things, you know, people who are platformed and whatnot. If you have a really great idea that you just are not a good enough writer for, and you want to like have, and you're trying and you want to do it and you want to have an editor come in on it, that can make some sense. But, you know, that costs a lot of money. And I don't think you should do that. I think that you should be a good enough writer to get your agent, because that's what you're going to need to be anyways. And in order to, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to, this is the stuff that people don't love to hear. It's okay to not succeed at writing, and it's okay to put a book in a drawer, and it's okay to get better. We all know that it's like, I have 4 books in a drawer. Like, I never got that adult thing done, right? A lot of people have books in drawers, and you just have to move on at some point if it doesn't work. But I think that the sort of the real answer to that question is, you need to have a support system. You need to have your book group, your people who can help edit with you, and that you don't pay, but y'all are working with each other in order to make things, you know, better. But you also have to trust their advice. An editor, I mean, agents, we're going to edit your book before we go out of it. An editor is going to edit your book. A copy editor is going to edit your book. You're going to have tons of editing along the lines. It's okay to get an editor to do it, but it's the same thing as when we say, like, when you like for a magazine, you should submit to be published in the magazine, not submit $50 to try and win whatever magazine's prize. It's the same thing. You should be good enough to be able to be in there, because you need to be good enough to do that to be able to succeed anyways. So let's strive to get to that level. And if your book, you're feeling, is not there and people are saying that, then you need to be able to try and edit it to that place, have people give you that editorial notes, or you need to put it in a drawer and start a new one. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. We all have to do that. And it's a hard process, but that's the way it goes, because you don't want to have a deal and a book come out and then you have your next one and it's like not as strong, and you're left here directly into this other place because you haven't learned the tools that you need to be the most confident writer you can be. Does that make sense? I think it's a little harsh, but that's the way I really believe in it, that you got to be good enough anyways. Like, you want to be good enough. That's your goal. Like, right. So that's my take.
No, we're about the harshness here. It's last week was pretty harsh, overall.
I think that should be the new tagline, honestly. Ditch diggers. We're all about the harshness.
We're
here.
all about the harshness. I will write that one down. I'm taking notes
new
now.
T-shirt.
Oh, new T-shirt. We haven't had a T-shirt in a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah, we can. We
I
can
want
want the
it.
T-shirt. Yeah.
Oh, Seth wants a T-shirt, so we have to make a "It's All About the Harshness" T-shirt.
Yes.
For sure.
I want the kind of shirt that, like, you know, I can wear under a sports coat to a con, so I look professional, but also silly. You know, not silly, but like, you know, playful, interactive.
What kind of color does that have? Because it's not like, you don't want a white T-shirt, do you?
One example, a good one I had was for like a Comic-Con, I would go and have like the you know, the Goodnight Moon shirt, but instead it's the Death Star, and someone's saying that's no moon, you know, and so that's green with like the Goodnight Moon, you know. So that's an example of one I might have
Nice.
at a con, you know, and then
All
a
right.
sports coat over it.
All right. We'll get all of our team of graphic designers on it to make
Get
a
on
good ditch digger shirt that's good enough for you to wear to a con. Is it true that it's become harder to sell debut books that aren't pretty much ready to publish, as opposed to having strong editorial guidance and mentorship?
Okay, that seems contradictory for me to say. The answer is yes there probably, but I think that it's more of a I'm thinking of the wrong word here. It's more of the way the industry is right now, where editors are they're just too busy. There's just not enough people working in publishing. So it's harder for agents to sell books is really what we're saying. There's a number of times that we're like, wait, you're passing because of this. You don't want to put that like work into it or whatever. But people pass for all sorts of reasons. We get the books into pretty great shape before we send them out. And I mean, we try to. And if an editor is passing for those reasons, what they're really probably saying is more along the lines of developing of an author versus editing an author. And that is true. It's not that its debuts are harder. It's that the mid-list and the small books that people take risk on are harder for people to do. If you think about a place like Tor, which used to have these old editors who would buy things for $5,000 and do nothing with them, but then sometimes those books would end up working out, or develop an author to a way that they could then publish somewhere else, but they had a following like that. Those days are sort of gone. There's very few places that do that. Now Orbit pays less money because they're Orbit, but they still want the bigger, more successful push on things. And places like Del Rey, like they want big books only, right? And I've heard that out of the lips of editors in other places, right? So it's less about a book being ready to publish. It's more like, is this a book that we're gonna be able to build a career off of? Because that's the contracted industry in the big five spot in my mind.
Yeah, and the follow-up question to that is, how do you keep from day drinking yourself into liver failure at the state of the industry?
Me or them?
I don't know, actually. Valerie, if you're still around, can you clarify whether you're talking about as in Seth or you as in one? Secretly talking.
There's a lot of frustrating things going on, but there always is, I feel it and I fear for it, and there are some big problems that are probably not even worth bringing up here, but I tend to be the optimist in that, good writing is going to succeed, and it succeeds in interesting ways. Like I represent Ray Naylor, The Mountain and the Sea, and I really loved that book, and we sold it to MCD, which is, Jeff Vandermeer's publisher, River Solomon's publisher, but it's not necessarily like, it's not Tor, right? And they had a really beautiful package that I thought was a little risky, but it came out and it got a really great word of mouth, but it didn't. I was so frustrated at the publicist part, because I just thought that it wasn't pushed the way it should have been. The publication was a little soft, and it was. But to their credit, they really pushed. And they kept pushing, and they gave faith to it because the book was good, and then it was up for a lot of awards. And the thing is, if you go to Barnes and Noble right now, it has its own table because it's a speculative pick of the month or the summer. I kind of get confused, but I also wasn't sure. Do those things push? Do those things actually push copies the way I would love them to? But it has its own table. It's been selling really, really, really well, and that's a paperback. So that's me having faith in a book that I really believed in, and just. We push on it and we try it, and hopefully it works in the long tail, and then my goal is to just be able to sell the next book for more money, right? And then to do all these other ancillary things, and so yes, only like TikTok and Reese Witherspoon sells books now, but that's also not true, right? And what does all this stuff lead to? Like the rise of lit RPG as like and cozy fantasy, as like they came out of the self-publishing world because they weren't working in traditional publishing, and I'm into it now. I love it. It's interesting. But the publishers are like, what is this? Let's do something with it. I don't know. But they're bumping up against like the money that these authors are making versus not everything is going to be a Legends and Lattes, and some things are going to be other things, right? But I find that fascinating and interesting, and so part of the failures of traditional publishing help grow your successes. So thank you for that, I guess. But I also I think that it really comes down to like the writing that we need is out there, and if you're good and you'll be able, and you work hard enough to get to this fan base, then you'll find that audience in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm not too worried about the industry in general. Books will still be published, and I'm happy about it.
You might have just already answered this, but a question just came in. We talk about how screwed the industry is. I'm wondering, does anyone see a way through? Does it ever get better?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I think that it is. There's been some big mistakes. I cover a lot of that.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
I
could go
maybe
on.
You want to expand on it? You want to expand on it?
No,
please do. But I just feel
it's okay. It goes into different directions, so it's all good. Hey, good writers. We still want to read your books and sell them.
Absolutely.
So what? One thing that's I've experienced during my career is, for a variety of reasons, having many different agents, and I still am surprised when I hear that people they just assume that agent is this monolithic thing that, when you get an agent, X, Y, and Z is going to always happen, and they realize that agents are people, and some agents may not want to give you their phone number for you to text them, for just an example. So when people are interviewing agents, besides how well do you think you can sell my book, what else should they be asking when they're interviewing agents? Because I keep trying to tell people, remember, you're interviewing them just like they're interviewing you.
Yeah, and it makes sense that the power dynamic is different at first, right? You want that agent so badly.
Yeah.
And even though they're hiring, they're applying to work for you, to your small business. But it's clear that that's not the way, unless the agent is desperate to get you, right? Or there's a competition for you, or you're established in one way, shape, or form. But it doesn't mean that you don't still thoroughly vet your agent. And so that means you should be looking at the contract. You should be, the representation agreement. You should be asking, any questions you want. And the main things that you want to be asking are editorial questions, because you want to know if this, how this person acts editorially. You want to ask about ancillary rights. How do they handle film and TV? How do they handle foreign rights? You want to ask how they interact with you throughout the process beyond submission, like that's publicity, that's book covers, that's how often they want to be connected with. And that's a big one is, I have just started doing a little bit more phone exchange oriented things, and find myself really sort of disliking it, because it works really well during, say, an auction or something where you can get quick updates and you can speak to it. But then when text comes across asking me for something, that's not where I store my memory. It's not text is the least good thing for me.
Yeah. And
my ADD brain needs a unread email that I can then transfer over to a to-do list, right? So sometimes it's not about boundaries. Sometimes it's about the most effective means of communication. A lot of people ask about communication. I have a problem in that I value response time over depth of response. And Mur, I'm curious to know what you think here, though you don't have to say it out loud. But I didn't realize that this was actually a problem until one day I was at Comic-Con. I was speaking with who was it? It was Sylvain Nouvel and someone else who I repped. Who was it? Samuel? Someone else. And they were they were joking about who had gotten the shortest email from me. And Sylvain won because he's received emails from me that I answer questions in the subject line. But what I know is my value is I'm read and heard and acknowledged. And if there's something longer that needs a phone call or whatnot, then I will certainly put that in there. But I also know that sometimes I don't give as in-depth, or I'm flashing a response that's not answering the question. So what I would need in that situation is just someone to come back to me and be like, can we get a little bit more out of you here? But that's not trying to down on me. It's just it's the way that's back to the humanity side of it. We have good days, we have bad days, we have busy days, we have this days, we're traveling days. And so sometimes, and agents do things totally different. Younger agents versus older agents, rookie agents versus, established agents. And then, and by the way, go for a rookie agent. My first book I sold was a really big success and I feel great about it. And I was so lucky that happened. But one of the things I would make sure is that when you submit to an agent, they're at an agency that can still support that agent, right? You're as wise as the agency around it.
Yeah, we just had Arlie Sorg. We just had Arlie Sorg on interview, so he's really new agent, so we covered a lot of that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would say for anyone wanting to know about query letters or questions, you can type my name into YouTube and you can find like an hour-long query letter thing I did. Awesome. But all that's to say, I have a lot of thoughts along those lines, and the short of it is that it's okay to ask the questions and never ever submit exclusively to one agent. Go multiple. It's fine. You don't even have to tell them you're doing multiple until you have interest. If anyone, people should want to work with you, and just make sure you give them time. Never ever jump at an agent. That's the biggest problem that people have after that is they'll just jump at an agent. The number of times that I'm like, someone tells me, I've received full interest, and I'm like, okay, and then I bump it up to the top, and hey, I have a client thing, I need to finish this today, but I'll get to this tomorrow. And then they're like, oh, we signed this, and I was told I had a week and a half. That is frustrating because every agent thinks they're the best agent in the world, so I was a better agent than whoever they signed with, and I could have maybe done better. It's like you want to be your own business. You want that competition to put you in a better spot.
Yeah, as for your response time, it's always astonished me. I did have a problem with the previous agent of no responses. Like a book went many months without even acknowledging it was received. And that was a big problem. And so I've always been pleasantly surprised. But as I told you earlier this week, you sent me a response and then I wrote back to you and then I didn't hear anything. Like 3 days passed that I was nice. I said, look, for anybody else, this would not be a problem, but I'm worried you fell in a hole or something because you always answer back so quickly.
And what's so great about that, is that was speaking to our relationship. You usually respond quickly, so my set of expectations are a certain way. I just want to make sure all is good. And then my response was, you had actually asked a question that demanded some thoughtfulness around it. And so I was thinking around it. And then because you nudged me, I'm pretty sure I didn't give you as thoughtful of a response as I could have, because I then was like, I better get a response in there. And that's the funny thing about the back and forth, so basically every person's going to establish their own thing, just like you're going to establish your own thing. And you got to just remember that like an agent is a relationship. It's probably the most important relationship in the business when it comes down to everyone else's transience. Finding a good agent, you can have that person forever.
Oh yeah. Well, I did appreciate the answer. It did help. So
good. Good.
Let's see, Matt. Do you have anything you wanted to bring up?
I do, but unfortunately, we're coming up on the hour here, and sadly we're going to have to start. No, the information was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sad because I feel like we barely scratched the surface of everything we could cover here. But that's kind of the problem. Is like,
you want to go 10 minutes over? I mean, I'm fine for it if you want. It's up to you. If you can't, no, whatever. Fine.
That's
I
Matt's
absolutely
call.
can't. I'm really sorry that I can't. I have a hard out, unfortunately.
It's all good.
But I would love to have. I would love to have you back at some point to talk about more, because I know people have more questions for us. It's just, again, that's why we do this podcast. There's so much to cover that too many people don't cover. But for sure. The answers are great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Where can we find you online as an author, and then I guess as an agent? I don't know if you're closed to submissions or not.
I am always open and closed at the same time. I do have a pretty full list, but and right now I'm going on vacation, agent. So but you can still always. The thing is, things can get through, and that's fine. But you'll be speaking to my assistant probably, but he's great. So you can find me online, including website at Seth A.S. Fishman. My middle name is Aaron and Shy, so Seth as Fishman is both Instagram, Twitter, and my website for books. And then for my email for work, yes, you can reference this this podcast when you query, and that's totally fine. Don't send it to the info account. Send it directly to me. That's probably got a better chance. And my email address is confusing, so it's probably needs to be typed in somewhere. But it's you can find it online, sfishman at thegurnertco.com. Try and figure that out and see if you can do that. But that's it.
Okay.
Yes, mention this podcast, and Seth will actually only take 8% commission. That's a special we're running this week.
Exactly. Only 8%. The other 7% will save orcas.
Exactly. They will go to the
about the
Orca
orcas.
support fund. It's all about the orcas, Mar. That's another T-shirt we can do right
I'll
there.
write it down.
That's Seth can wear to a con under his blazer. It'll be
All
awesome.
about the orcas. And then, you can wear the white whale, the white orca shirt too.
Absolutely.
Okay, Matt, tell us where we can find you.
I'm, clinging to the sinking ship that is Twitter. I'm usually still there because I just can't give it up. It's an abusive relationship. I'm working on it. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at Matt F. Wallace. My website, matt-wallace.com, where I try to keep it up to date with all I'm touring right now throughout the month in support of Savage Crowns, which just came out last Tuesday. So please go buy that and go check my website to see where you can find me. This month, I'm doing events with Preemie, who's in the chat right now. We got one coming up at the end of the month, a Mysterious Galaxy virtual event. Everybody can come to that. And I did want to quickly just backtrack and say I saw that I believe the kids are sleeping. Put the link to the Steam link to Clockwork Revolution, the video game I'm writing, in the chat, and I really appreciated that. But you should go check that out as well. And if you haven't seen the Clockwork Revolution trailer, please go look that up because it's a fucking amazing trailer.
Matt, the cover of your most recent book looks awesome. Just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Chris McGrath, we were so lucky to have Chris for all 3 books. I love how the trilogy looks together. Chris did every one, and every one I feel like is better than the last one. So yeah, I appreciate that. But I totally agree. I'm really happy with how those all came out.
For the stream, we're going to be rating Space Valkyries, who is a friend of the stream, but they're streaming right now, so we're going to go say hey to them. And as for me, you can find me at merverse.com. My next book, Chaos Terminal, which fell off the desk earlier. I'm so good at this.
Wait, mine came in. I should have brought it to the thing. You got it right there. Yes, I have it in.
Yes, very pretty. Chaos Terminal is available for pre-order.
I love those covers.
Yes,
that's a great.
yes.
Yeah, those have great covers too.
Yeah.
Sincerely, they knocked it out of the park with those. I'm very excited to read it myself. I don't have a copy yet. So.
I know. I know.
It just came in. It just came in.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm just saying. I'm just very excited about
Anyway,
it.
merverse.com is where you can find me. Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you, Matt. And we'll go say hey to Space Valkyries. The raid tag is #merraid. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks to you, everyone, and really, good luck with you on everything. Everything's, just keep writing. We all want to read it. We're excited about it.
Damn right. Thank you, Seth.
This podcast was produced under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives License. Music provided by Devo Spice, devospice.com.
Ditch Diggers!
This is a free podcast brought to you by the kindness of our patrons. If you would like to also be kind and a patron, go to patreon.com/mightymur.